The city below was alive with neon lights, flying cars, and endless noise. But in the tallest tower of them all, there was only silence. Adrian Corin sat in his massive office, staring at glowing screens full of numbers. He was the richest man in the galaxy, the CEO of Corin Industries, a company that built warships, weapons, and machines for governments and empires. Entire star systems depended on him, but he felt nothing. Adrian was known as the machine in a suit. He wore the same black suit every day, his sharp features as cold as the glass walls around him. He had no family. No friends. No one dared to speak to him unless it was business. His empire had crushed enemies and taken markets, and he had never once felt guilt or pride. To him, emotions were a weakness. He trusted numbers, contracts, and power. Love. It was for fools. Music. A waste of time. The only sound in his office was the quiet hum of machines and the soft click of his fingers on a holographic screen. Outside, rain tapped against the tower's glass. The city's lights reflected like a sea of stars, but Adrian didn't look. He was deep in work, analyzing weapon production schedules for a new contract. Billions of credits were at stake, and lives meant nothing to him. Then, he froze. Something soft drifted through the silence, a sound. A voice. Adrian blinked. He thought it was a glitch in his audio system. He adjusted his screens, but the voice remained. A woman was singing. The sound was faint but clear, like a stream of water cutting through stone. Adrian's hand hovered over his data pad, frozen. He wasn't used to feeling anything. But this sound made his chest tighten. His heart, usually calm and steady, skipped a beat. Where is that coming from? He whispered to himself. He stood up, something he rarely did during work hours, and followed the sound. His office was on the 120th floor, with no open windows. No one was supposed to be able to get this close. He left his glowing screens behind, stepping into the dim hallway. The voice grew louder. It wasn't just music, it carried something deeper, something ancient. He felt it in his bones. The coldness in him, built over decades of ruthless decisions, cracked for the first time. He clenched his jaw and followed it through a maintenance door, down a stairwell, and into an old, unused corridor of his tower. The hallway was dark, lit only by flickering lights. Adrian, a man used to perfect control, now felt uneasy. His polished shoes clicked against the floor as the song pulled him deeper. He reached a broken glass door at the end of the hall. Beyond it was a plaza he'd forgotten existed, a neglected courtyard at the very base of the tower. Rain poured through holes in the ceiling, forming puddles that reflected neon signs from the streets outside. And there she was. A young woman sat under a broken streetlight, her long dark hair wet with rain, her clothes torn. She sang softly, her eyes closed, her voice so pure it felt unreal. The air around her shimmered faintly, as if the song itself had power. Adrian froze. He felt like he was seeing a ghost. The woman stopped singing and opened her eyes. They glowed faintly, just enough for him to see that she wasn't like anyone else. She smiled softly, as if she had been expecting him. "You finally heard me," she said. Her voice was calm, but it sent a chill down his spine. Adrian took a step back. He didn't know what to say. People didn't talk to him like this. Nobody even looked him in the eye. "Who are you?" he asked sharply. She tilted her head, amused by his tone. "Does it matter? You came looking for me." Adrian felt something strange, anger, fear, curiosity. Emotions he hadn't felt in years. He reached for the security device on his wrist, but she just shook her head. "Your guards can't help you," she whispered. "Not tonight." Before he could respond, the sound of boots echoed from behind him. Adrian turned sharply. Out of the shadows, several men appeared, all wearing black armor and carrying sleek rifles. Mercenaries. Adrian's mind raced. He recognized the armor. They weren't his men. They were assassins. Someone had sent them to kill him. The woman stood slowly, her wet hair clinging to her face. The mercenaries raised their weapons. "Kill the CEO," one of them ordered, his voice distorted by a helmet speaker. Adrian's stomach dropped. For the first time in years, fear gripped him. The woman stepped forward. She began to sing again. The air trembled. The mercenaries faltered, clutching their helmets. Their rifles sparked, glitching out. One by one, they collapsed, screaming, as if the music was tearing through their minds. Adrian stood frozen, staring at her in shock. When she finished, silence filled the courtyard. The mercenaries lay unconscious, their weapons fried. The woman looked at Adrian with calm, glowing eyes. "You're not safe here," she said softly. "Come with me if you want to live." Adrian, a man who never trusted anyone, now felt like he had no choice. Adrian Corin had been threatened before. Competitors, governments, and mercenaries had all tried to break him, but none had ever gotten this close. Now, standing in a dark, rain-soaked courtyard surrounded by unconscious assassins, he felt something he hadn't felt in years: vulnerability. The woman's glowing eyes studied him carefully. She stood calm and steady, her wet hair sticking to her face, her breathing slow. The power in her voice still echoed in the back of Adrian's mind like a ghost. What did you do to them?" Adrian asked, his voice low. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stepped past him and knelt beside one of the fallen mercenaries, gently placing her hand on his helmet. A faint hum filled the air. Sparks danced over her fingertips as she touched the man's armor, and then she stood. "They won't wake up," she said softly. "Not for a long time." Adrian stared at her. He had built weapons capable of destroying entire planets, but he had never seen anything like this. Music that could disable soldiers and technology. It was impossible, or at least, it should have been. "You're not human," he said finally, his tone sharp. The woman's lips curved into a small, knowing smile. "You're not wrong." She turned and began walking toward a side exit of the courtyard. Adrian hesitated. He didn't trust anyone he couldn't. But staying here was dangerous. If one assassination team could get through his tower's defenses, another one would be coming soon. "Follow me," she said without turning back. Against every instinct, Adrian followed. The two of them slipped through a series of maintenance tunnels beneath the tower. The air smelled of metal and damp concrete. Pipes lined the walls, dripping water. The woman moved quickly but silently, like she had walked these tunnels many times before. Adrian's mind raced. Who was she? How did she know these tunnels? Why was he still following her? He had spent his life building walls around his empire, around his heart. Now a stranger with glowing eyes was leading him through the underbelly of his own building, and he wasn't even stopping her. "You should explain," Adrian finally said, his voice echoing in the tunnel. The woman glanced back at him. "My name is Lyra." "That tells me nothing," he said coldly. "You're alive because of me," she said calmly, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark. That should be enough for now. Adrian clenched his fists but didn't argue. She was right. They reached a metal door that led to an abandoned subway platform. The place was dark and silent, filled with dust and rust. Old advertisements for long-forgotten products hung on the cracked walls. Adrian realized with a jolt that he hadn't been in a place like this in decades. He lived in towers and private ships, far above the ground. Lyra sat on an overturned crate, her glowing eyes dimming. She looked exhausted, but her voice was steady. "They're coming for you," she said. "You're their biggest target now." Adrian narrowed his eyes. "Who is they?" Lyra looked at him for a long moment, then said quietly, "The ones you've been building weapons for." Adrian froze. He had supplied war machines to dozens of governments, empires, and corporations. His company didn't ask questions, it only delivered results. But now, for the first time, he felt a creeping sense of guilt. "Why would they want me dead?" he asked. Lyra leaned forward, her glowing eyes piercing through the dark. "Because you know too much. And because, they're afraid of me." Adrian frowned. "You?" Lyra nodded slowly. "They think I'm a weapon. A threat to their control. They're not wrong." She stood and began walking toward him. Her movements were calm, but her presence filled the room like a storm. "I'm not here to kill you, Adrian," she said softly. "I'm here because I need your help." Adrian laughed bitterly. "My help? You seem to be doing fine without me. You just took down an entire squad of mercenaries without lifting a finger." Lyra tilted her head. "I didn't say I couldn't protect myself. I said I needed your help. There's a difference." Adrian's eyes narrowed. "Why me?" Lyra stepped closer until she was only a few feet away. The faint glow in her eyes illuminated his face. "Because you control the largest weapons empire in the galaxy," she whispered. "And because the people you work for are about to start a war that will burn every world in this sector. I can't stop them alone." "But you can." Adrian's breath caught in his throat. No one had ever spoken to him like this, not with fear, not with respect, but with certainty. "You think I'll betray them? You think I'll destroy the very empire I built?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. Lyra smiled faintly. "I don't think you will. I know you will. Because deep down, you're not the monster they think you are." Adrian felt a strange heat in his chest. Nobody had ever said something like that to him. For a moment, he didn't know how to respond. Before he could speak, a faint sound echoed through the tunnels, the distant clanging of boots. "More mercenaries." Lyra grabbed his arm. "They've found us. We need to move. Now." They ran through the abandoned station, their footsteps splashing through puddles. The sound of boots and shouted orders grew louder behind them. Lyra glanced back and whispered something under her breath. Suddenly, the old lights above them flickered and exploded, plunging the tunnel into darkness. Adrian felt her hand grip his tightly, pulling him forward. "Stay close," she whispered. "I'll get us out of here alive." For the first time in his life, Adrian wasn't the one in control. And strangely, he trusted her. The tunnels shook with the sound of boots. The mercenaries were close now, their voices echoing in the dark. Adrian's breath came fast, his sharp business mind racing for an escape plan, but here in these abandoned passages, his wealth and power meant nothing. He was just a man being hunted. Lyra's glowing eyes cut through the darkness as she led him through a maze of crumbling corridors. She moved quickly and quietly, never hesitating at a turn. Adrian tried to keep up, but the uneven floor and low light made every step dangerous. "Where are we going?" he whispered. "Somewhere safe," she murmured, not looking back. Behind them, a metallic click echoed. A rifle being cocked. Lyra spun around. "Down," she hissed. Adrian ducked as a bolt of plasma seared past him, striking the wall and filling the tunnel with blinding blue light. More mercenaries appeared, their armored silhouettes moving like shadows in the flickering glow. "Don't let them escape," a voice barked. Adrian pressed himself against the wall, his heart pounding. He was used to boardrooms and secret negotiations, not being shot at. He'd paid millions for security, but none of it had saved him tonight. Lyra stepped forward calmly, her bare feet splashing through puddles. The mercenaries aimed their rifles, ready to fire. And then she sang. The sound started as a low hum, soft but powerful. It was beautiful, almost soothing, but the effect was devastating. The mercenaries froze, their helmets buzzing with static. One by one, their weapons sparked and shut down. The hum grew louder, turning into a melody that filled the tunnels with a strange energy. Lights flickered. Metal trembled. Adrian felt the sound vibrate through his bones, deep and resonant, like the voice of something far older than humanity itself. The mercenaries groaned and clutched their heads. Their armor systems flickered and died. One dropped his rifle, which shattered as if the sound itself had cracked it. Lyra's song climbed higher, each note like a blade. The men screamed, falling to their knees. One tried to crawl away, but his helmet burst in a shower of sparks, knocking him unconscious. Adrian stared in shock. He had seen weapons that could vaporize entire cities, but nothing like this. No bullets. No blasts. Just her voice, echoing like a force of nature. Within moments, the tunnel was silent again. The mercenaries lay motionless, their armor fried, their weapons useless. Lyra stopped singing, and the sound faded away, leaving only the soft drip of water. Adrian's ears rang in the sudden quiet. His heart hammered in his chest as he looked at her. She stood still, her glowing eyes dimming slightly, her face calm. What are you?" he whispered. Lyra turned to him, her expression unreadable. "I'm not your enemy," she said softly. "That's not an answer," he said sharply, trying to hide the fear in his voice. She walked past him, stepping over the fallen mercenaries. "If I told you what I am, would you believe me?" Adrian hesitated. "Try me." Lyra stopped and looked back at him. The glow in her eyes flickered faintly. "I was made," she said. "Not born. A long time ago." Adrian frowned. "Made? By who?" She shook her head. "Not here. It's not safe to talk." As if to prove her point, a distant explosion echoed through the tunnels. Dust rained from the ceiling. Adrian stiffened. "They're sealing exits," Lyra said quickly. "We have to move." They ran again, weaving through the maze of tunnels. Lyra led him into a wide chamber, its ceiling supported by rusted steel beams. It was once a maintenance hub, but now it was nothing more than a graveyard of old machines. She stopped suddenly and placed her hand on a metal wall panel. A faint glow spread from her fingertips, and the wall shifted, revealing a hidden passage. Adrian stared in disbelief. "You know these tunnels," he said, more accusation than question. Lyra glanced back at him. "I know a lot of things you don't." They slipped inside, and the wall sealed behind them. For a moment, Adrian allowed himself to breathe. The hidden room was small but dry, with dim blue lights glowing along the walls. It looked like some kind of old safe house. Lyra sat on a metal crate, her glowing eyes softening as she looked at him. "You've built weapons for the worst people in the galaxy," she said quietly. "You've armed tyrants, funded wars, and destroyed worlds, without lifting a finger." Adrian stiffened. "I sell to the highest bidder. It's business. It's blood," she said sharply, her voice cutting through him like a blade. For the first time in years, Adrian felt ashamed. He had built his empire on power and control, but this woman, this strange being, was tearing down the walls he'd built around himself with just her words. "Why are they after you?" he asked finally. Lyra's expression darkened. "Because I'm the only thing that can stop them." "Stop who?" Adrian demanded. She looked him straight in the eye. "The fleet you built." Adrian froze. "What?" Lyra nodded. "Your weapons, your ships, they're being used to enslave entire systems. I've seen it. I've felt it. And they're afraid I can end it all." Adrian's stomach twisted. He had always thought of his empire as untouchable, but now he felt like a pawn in someone else's game. "You're saying I'm next," he muttered. Lyra nodded slowly. "Unless you help me." Adrian stared at her, his mind racing. He had more money and power than anyone in the galaxy, but for the first time, he realized none of it could save him. The woman sitting in front of him wasn't just dangerous, she was powerful beyond anything he'd ever seen. And something deep inside him told him she wasn't lying. For the first time in years, Adrian Corin felt fear. But under that fear, something else stirred. Hope. Adrian Corin sat in the dimly lit safe house, his back against the cold metal wall. The room was silent except for the faint hum of old machinery and the distant rumble of explosions echoing through the tunnels. For the first time in his life, Adrian wasn't the one giving orders. He wasn't in control. And it was eating at him. Lyra sat across from him, her glowing eyes dim now, as if she was tired. She rested her hands on her lap, humming softly under her breath. The sound was low and calm, but it carried a strange power. It wasn't the same deadly song she used before. This one was soft, steady like a heartbeat. Adrian didn't realize he was holding his breath until the sound forced him to exhale. "You're afraid," she said suddenly. Adrian tensed. "I'm not afraid." Lyra tilted her head, her faint smile returning. "Yes, you are. You've spent your whole life pretending you don't feel anything. But fear is human. You're human." Adrian's jaw tightened. He wanted to argue, but he couldn't. Because she was right. He was afraid. "I've been hunted before," he said finally, his voice low. "Assassination attempts, sabotage, betrayals. I've dealt with it all. But this is different. They didn't just come for me. They came for you." Lyra nodded. "They fear what I am." Adrian leaned forward. "Then tell me. What are you?" Lyra was quiet for a moment, then she spoke softly. "I was created a long time ago, by a race that no longer exists. They built me to protect, not destroy. But your kind, humans, destroyed them. And now their creations are all that's left." Adrian blinked. "You're saying humans wiped out your creators?" Lyra's eyes glowed faintly as she nodded. 1,000 years ago. Your people called it a war of expansion. My creators called it genocide. My kind was hunted and destroyed. I'm one of the last. Adrian felt a strange heaviness in his chest. He had built his empire without caring who lived or died. But hearing this, it was different. This wasn't just politics or business. This was history. Blood history. Then why save me, he asked. If humans killed your creators, why not kill me too? I'm not exactly innocent. Lyra looked at him, her glowing eyes soft but firm. Because I don't see you the way you see yourself. You're not a monster, Adrian. Not yet. Adrian stared at her, speechless. Nobody had ever said anything like that to him. He was feared. Respected. But never understood. He felt a crack deep inside him, in a place he had buried for years. Another distant explosion shook the walls. Adrian stood, pacing the small room. I built those ships, he said quietly, almost to himself. The fleet that's enslaving worlds. I made it possible. Lyra didn't reply. She just watched him. Adrian's voice grew colder. Every war in this sector runs on my weapons. I gave power to the wrong people. I let it happen because it made me rich. Lyra finally spoke. Then take it back. He turned to her sharply. What? Take it back, she repeated. You know their systems. You know their weaknesses. You know where they hide, where they strike, and how they think. Nobody else in the galaxy has that knowledge. If you choose to fight, you could burn their empire down in weeks. Adrian froze. Her words hit him like a blade. He had spent his whole life building walls, protecting himself from weakness. But now, standing in front of Lyra, he realized something: he didn't want to be that man anymore. I've spent years making people fear me, he said softly. But fear won't save this galaxy. Not now. Lyra stood, stepping closer to him. Her glowing eyes reflected the flickering blue lights of the safe house. You're right, she said gently. It won't. She placed a hand over his chest. Adrian stiffened but didn't pull away. I can hear it, she whispered. Your heart, it's not as cold as you think. For a moment, they stood in silence. Adrian felt something shift inside him, something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Tell me what to do, he said finally. Lyra's faint smile widened. We start by taking control of your company. Tonight. Adrian raised an eyebrow. You mean, all of it? All of it, she confirmed. Your board of directors is already compromised. Your factories are under enemy surveillance. If we wait any longer, you'll lose everything. And they'll use your empire to crush every world they touch. Adrian exhaled slowly. Then we strike first. Lyra nodded. Adrian turned toward a wall panel, pulling out a small handheld communicator. His voice was calm, but there was a fire in it now. Security Command, this is Corin, he said sharply. Shut down all external network connections. Lock down every shipyard. I want a level 0 alert across all systems. If anyone resists, detain them. Effective immediately. His men on the other end sounded shocked. Sir? That would trigger an interstellar alert. Everyone will know. Good, Adrian said coldly. Let them know. He turned back to Lyra. I've spent my whole life building an empire of fear. Now I'll use it to burn theirs to the ground. Lyra's faint smile grew. That's what I wanted to hear. Outside, alarms began blaring through the tower above them. Entire networks shifted under Adrian's command. Factories locked down, ships halted production, and secret shipments vanished from enemy hands. The galaxy had no idea yet, but something had changed. The cold-hearted CEO was done being a pawn. And for the first time in his life, Adrian Corin was going to war. The galaxy was burning. Adrian Corin stood on the bridge of his personal flagship, the Iron Dominion. Around him, screens flickered with live feeds of enemy fleets scrambling in panic. His empire had turned overnight. The weapons they had used to enslave worlds now pointed back at them. Shipyards across 7 systems are offline, sir, his commander reported. Factories are locked down, and their supply lines are collapsing. It's working. Adrian's cold eyes scanned the battlefield ahead. Dozens of enemy warships hovered like a wall of steel and fire, blocking their path. He had built many of those ships himself. Now, they were coming to kill him. Lyra stood beside him, calm and steady. Her glowing eyes reflected the dim lights of the bridge. She didn't look afraid. "They'll throw everything at us," Adrian muttered. Lyra nodded. "Good. Let them. The more they send, the easier it is to break them." Adrian looked at her. "You really believe that?" She turned to him, her expression soft but confident. "I don't just believe it. I know it." The enemy fleet moved first. Hundreds of plasma rounds lit up the void, streaking toward Adrian's ships. The Iron Dominion shook as shields absorbed the first wave. "Return fire," Adrian ordered calmly. His fleet unleashed a storm of missiles and energy blasts, lighting the blackness of space like 1,000 suns. Explosions rippled through the enemy formation, but their numbers barely seemed to thin. "They're pressing forward," a crew member shouted. Adrian stayed calm. "Hold formation. Let them come closer." Lyra stepped forward, her bare feet silent against the steel floor. She closed her eyes and began to hum softly. The sound was almost too low to hear, but Adrian felt it in his bones. A deep vibration spread through the ship, traveling across comm systems, through scanners and sensors. The hum turned into a melody, haunting and powerful. It flowed through every ship in the fleet, through every soldier's earpiece, through the very metal of their weapons. Adrian watched as enemy ships began to flicker. Shields collapsed. Engines died mid-flight. Their massive war machines built by his own company started shutting down one by one. "Sir," his tactical officer shouted. "Their systems are crashing. It's like they're being jammed from the inside." Adrian's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Not jammed," he said softly. "Broken." Lyra's song grew louder. The entire battlefield trembled with her voice. Enemy ships spun out of control, colliding with each other. Fire blossomed across the void like flowers of light. On the bridge, Adrian watched her, stunned. She wasn't just a weapon. She was alive, and her voice was reshaping the war itself. "Advance," Adrian ordered. "No mercy." His fleet surged forward, moving with precision and power. For the first time, Adrian wasn't just fighting for profit or survival, he was fighting for something real. The enemy fleet broke within minutes. Ships exploded, retreated, or shut down entirely. Entire squadrons went dark, their systems fried by Lyra's impossible voice. But Adrian wasn't satisfied. He wanted to end this war tonight. "Target their command ship," he said coldly. The Iron Dominion turned its guns toward a massive dreadnought at the center of the enemy formation. The dreadnought fired everything it had, shaking Adrian's ship, but Lyra's song cut through their defenses. Their shields collapsed, and Adrian gave the order. Fire! A blinding beam tore through the darkness, striking the enemy's flagship. The explosion lit up the stars, and for a brief moment, the battlefield fell silent. The enemy fleet scattered, leaderless and broken. The war Adrian had fueled for years was collapsing in a single night. When it was over, Adrian stood at the bridge window, staring at the wreckage drifting in space. Fires flickered across shattered ships, painting the blackness with streaks of orange and red. Lyra's song faded into silence. She looked tired but calm, her glowing eyes dimmer now. "It's done," she said softly. Adrian turned to her. "For now," he said. "But this is only the beginning." Lyra tilted her head. "You want to destroy them all, don't you?" Adrian didn't hesitate. "They used my empire to enslave the galaxy. They thought they could control me. They thought they could control you." He stepped closer, his voice low but firm. "They were wrong." Lyra studied him for a moment, then smiled faintly. "You've changed." Adrian's cold demeanor cracked, just slightly. "Maybe," he admitted. She turned back to the stars. "They'll fear you now. More than ever." Adrian glanced at her. "Not me," he said quietly. "Us." For the first time, Lyra's expression softened. Hours later, as the fleet repaired and regrouped, Adrian found himself alone on the observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly before him, but tonight, they felt different. For years, he had seen them only as markets to exploit, territories to control. Now, they felt alive. Behind him, Lyra's voice echoed softly. She wasn't singing a weapons song this time. It was gentle, peaceful, almost human. Adrian closed his eyes and listened. The man who had once been called the machine in a suit felt warmth in his chest, a warmth he thought was long dead. When he opened his eyes, Lyra was gone. She had disappeared as quietly as she had arrived, leaving only her melody behind, floating through the corridors of his ship. Adrian turned back to the stars. "The war isn't over," he murmured. "But neither am I." And for the first time in his life, Adrian Corin smiled.